Hi, everyone. I am Austin Culp, Senior Director of Sales here at InflowCX, and welcome to the Inflow Experience Podcast. We've got a really great episode today with Dan Frasco over at Amplix, all around contact center security, compliance. We get into a lot of really good stuff. If you're new to the show, or if this is the first time you're listening after our merger with Amplix, wanted to give a little bit of background, right? So Amplix is now the parent company of InflowCX. And it's a really great, marriage of two organizations. Amplix has amazing expertise around IT, security, compliance, which is why we're talking to them, today about this. And on the InflowCX side, we are and always have been, as everyone knows, contact center and CX specialists. And so the, sort of joining of forces with the two companies has really empowered us to help customers on anything IT or technology related. Which is really great, complementary services, and we're excited for it. Proven today by my guest host, Dan Frasco. Dan, welcome, man, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I know the first podcast, if you've ever listened, I know I briefed you a little bit. I always ask people a little bit of a curveball. Would really love to know about your first job and what you learned from it.
Oh boy, geez, I'm assuming that would mean my first job was like a caddy or working at a pizza shop. But
nice.
I'm assuming my first real career job when I got out of school. So that was actually working at Fidelity Investments as a systems engineer or associate systems engineer as a sit tester. It was funny because when I worked in there, I knew nothing. I was green as green could be. And, met with a really diverse group of people. I mean, my first manager was actually legally visually blind. My first couple of people that worked there, they were really brilliant. Two of the full-time employees, one of them actually, lived through the famine in the Soviet Union, had broken English. I mean, it was an amazing group of people. But learning things out of there, the first thing I learned was what I learned in college meant nothing, except for the skills that I learned. The actual computer science skills, I was a computer science economics major, but the actual stuff that I learned there, the actual courses and stuff, most stuff that didn't matter, right? It was actually how to actually learn, how to research, how to collaborate, how to work in teams. But most importantly, and you've heard this probably a million times, but how to actually listen, watch and listen, use your eyes and ears. Those are probably the most important things that I learned in my first job.
Absolutely. No, that's a great lesson to learn early too, because I find, when you're early in your career, you so badly want to prove it, right? Like, hey, I belong here. And that can oftentimes lead to the inverse, which is talking and not listening. That's great. Yeah. Having a visually
your third job, all those jobs,
Yeah, exactly. And having a visually impaired manager had to have its own set of challenges, I'm sure.
What a great guy to have as your first boss, though. I mean, he was super kind, super knowledgeable. These people had no egos. It was really great.
That's awesome. Hey, my boss now is mentally impaired, but he's not on here to defend himself. So we all have one as it is. No, just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I would love for you to just give a little bit of more of an intro on what you do at Amplix.
It's really great. Amplix, prior when they were sort of forming the group and everything, a lot of these companies were focused on telecom and UCaaS and CCaaS and deploying those things. And as they were growing, they really wanted to, go into more of the security and cloud and infrastructure areas. So they asked me to come in and sort of solidify and lead and grow those areas around security and cloud and infrastructure. So I spent a lot of my time just educating and guiding and helping our sales teams, our customers, our partners, sort of develop solutions to meet those needs. That can take all sorts of different forms, right? I mean, that could be doing, risk assessments. That can be having design discussions. That could be doing, a training module for the sales team. I've done a couple of those and a few of those on different topics that they choose, right? It could be sessions with CTOs and architects and engineers. I could be sitting down with a CIO or head of IT or even a CFO explaining what this technology or what these solutions mean and actually the value to their business, right? I mean, why do I want to spend that money on this, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times when you think about it, security it looks like a cost versus a value, right? Mm-hmm. You can turn that stuff around. Actually, it's actually a value to your organization versus just a cost. IT is ever evolving, right? Cybersecurity continues to grow, right? There's all these different things that these bad actors, they come up with new things, right? I mean, it doesn't just go away, right? So you can't just like sit there and be like, oh, I'm sorry, can you like stop? Stop
Please.
doing that thing? I wish I could do that, right? I mean, it'd just be like, yeah, no, not me today, not me this year. But our job is to just continue to come up with better ways to thwart their efforts, right? And basically to stop them wherever we can, and best prepare ourselves, for something that's going to happen. I mean, and anybody that says that they can stop everything is just wrong. All the best you can do is just to prepare yourself the best you can, and be ready for when and if that something happens.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I totally agree. Right, like I always joke with people that you always hear politicians sometimes say, "Hey, I'm not taking questions today," but we can't really do that with bad actors in cybersecurity. Like, okay, nope, sorry, not today. Come back tomorrow, and maybe we'll be open to that. That's not really the reality of how it works. And great that you have worn so many hats and do different things. It probably gives you a good wide array of just the space and what customers want and need, and keep your ear to the ground as far as the market goes.
Yeah, my career at Fidelity was such a great one. Spending 27 years there, and being able to see and feel so many different technologies and stuff while I was there, and not having to move companies. It was fantastic having that opportunity.
Awesome, that's good. Well, switching gears a little bit into more of compliance, which I know we're going to talk about today. It's a relatively wide topic, right? Especially when it comes to the contact center space. There's all kinds of different vertical compliances and thing. I don't want to necessarily dig into each one to keep it relevant for the broader audience, but I mean, what are some of the best practices you've seen with an organization, and specifically maybe any with contact centers, to employ compliance initially? And then I know there's this whole sort of ongoing monitoring piece. It's not like you just set it and forget it and it's done. As you mentioned, the IT space is ever evolving. And so would be curious on your thoughts on, just some of the best practices we've seen up front, and then how to make sure you're staying up to date and optimizing that over time.
Sure, of course. Well, there's good news and bad news for the CCAS space, right? Because there's so many areas concerned. So, the good news is that it's such a broad area, and IT in general, there's such a broad area. There's just so many areas, right? The bad news is that in IT, there's so many areas and such a broad area. So, right? So no matter how you look at it, but there's so much, because there's such a broad area, it comes with lots of opportunity, right? We always say that, right? With challenges comes opportunity. And so that's kind of the best thing about it, right? And so the number one thing when I think about compliance is understanding what you're trying to be in compliance with, right? And that's usually the hardest thing for people to kind of grasp their arms around, is understanding the different components of what they're trying to be in compliance with. And then actually creating policies around what they're trying to be compliance with, right? And actually make sure those policies make sense for their organization. And there's tools for helping track your policies and make sure they're in place, that they're organized and everything else. And we have different providers, MSSPs and consultants within our ecosystem that can actually help develop those policies should you not have them, right? Because a lot of times, I hate to say it, people kind of forget to put those policies in place and actually write them down. They just kind of assume that people know what they are. Mm-hmm. And they've reviewed them or whatever else. Larger companies obviously have more things in place, but smaller companies haven't invested in there yet, right? And it's hard, right? It can get tedious and expensive and whatever else. And so, being able to hire someone that's really gifted in that area helps them out, right? And so that it's we have people that can help that are in our ecosystem, and people sometimes put a bad sort of negative tone on policies, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't have to be, right? Policies actually help employees understand how to stay in the swim lane, like what's inbounds, what's out of bounds, help them, make sure they feel comfortable in what they're doing in their job, to make sure they understand where they're going, right? The language in some of these different compliances and stuff, it can be very confusing, and so this helps break that down into what's relevant for their company and their position. And so having that policy that's for your company can actually help make things easier for your employees and not so difficult. that they have to read the actual compliance language and have to digest it for their job and for their role. So actually, it can help, right? Now, when you have policies, having controls to enforce those policies actually helps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have controls that are actually monitoring those policies for you, right? So they can actually put those controls around things and helps make sure those policies are being followed. Because if the policies aren't being followed, you get yourself in trouble, right? So, having that monitoring in place, and then so you can't just monitor them. You actually have to, do that thing called reporting, right? So now you have to put some reporting around those policies, right? And so that's not a bad thing either. So you can actually report on things because, when you think about it, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to make sure that you're not wavering outside of your compliance, right? And so you can actually put tools in place to make sure that you're staying, within compliance of the policies, make sure controls are actually running the way they should be, and make sure that everything is actually functioning the way that it goes. And so you can actually put automation around exercising the controls as well, right? So now you have the controls, you have the actual monitoring on stuff, you have the reporting on it. Now you have automation that's actually exercising the controls to make sure that they're actually reacting the way that they should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that obviously the more automation you can put in place for these things and the exercise you can do, the better chance you have of there being no lapses in that control. And if there is a lapse, that's okay, right? Things break. We're all human. These machines break all, sometimes, whatever, right? Can't get twisted about it, is that you can actually go and remediate them better, remediate them quicker, right? And you can avoid there actually being a control that's broken when audit comes in and fixes them before there is an audit issue, right? You can avoid, more importantly, you can avoid there actually being an unfortunate event that happens when the thing's broken, right? So all these things kind of work together to make sure that you're protecting yourself and that things are working smoothly. And an even better outcome of this too is that when you actually do have your planned audit that comes in or whatever else, is that you can actually a lot of times compile your evidence beforehand. You can have this stuff kind of pulled together, so when your auditor comes in to pull the stuff together, you can actually have a lot of that compliance documentation on hand and ready to give them. I've been working and talking with a bunch of different providers. There's a few in this space in particular, trying to get them to pull templates together for some of these compliances where you can basically kind of have those automated reports come out and actually provide them to auditors when they come in. So you're not actually trying to run around and come up with, pull the stuff together, having a manual process, having it be more automated and stuff. So hopefully there's more to come in that space. People have started with some portions of it. It's not complete yet, though, and so I'm trying to get them to actually make them a little more fortified and stuff. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that'd be really impactful. I can't imagine there's many more stressful situations than an audit, right? Even just the word, you kind of tense up at it, right? And yeah, I mean, having a lot of or preventing, I should say, a lot of the kind of scrambling around last minute, beat to sweat dripping down. Oh man, where is that? Where is that? Where is that? And just having it ready for you would be great. And then again, to your point too, I think anytime you can automate something safely and with control, it's great because at the end of the day, whether you're talking about compliance or security or even just following business process, there's always going to be human error, right? It's the biggest challenge, which is a good, I think, segue into sort of the last topic we've got, which is contact center agents. So specifically with contact center agents, it's already a pretty stressful job and role, right? They're in addition to just taking and talking with customers all day, every day. It's all they do. And look, the reality is most of the time it's not because customers are calling, telling them how thrilled they are. They've also got access to like a lot of customer information oftentimes, right? Depending on your industry. I mean, it could be something as critical as name, social security number, like credit card information. I mean, a lot of stuff. And we get questions from organizations sometimes that just say, we're doing this, but we know we're maybe not employing the best practices around making sure agents are set up to, be as successful here as they could be. What are some best practices you're seeing to ensure that, agents and then therefore, your customers are set up to be protected against, malicious actors that are, trying to get access to some of that information?
Yeah, I mean, so we could sit here and talk all day about this. So I'm just going to take one area, which is kind of still the largest number one threat out there in
Mm-hmm.
which is still ransomware in that area, malware and ransomware. So and people may not understand this. I mean, people say it, but I don't think they really get it. But our end users and our employees, they're still our best defense, right? You could deploy all sorts of systems out there and all sorts of gateways and email gateways and endpoint detection. Where our employees and end users are still our best defense because they're the ones that are actually going to see it at the end of the day. And there's things that can't be picked up necessarily by means like gateways and software. And we'll talk about those here. But they really are our best defense, and that's what we need to focus on. Phishing emails, they are all over the place, and some will get through your security system. They will, right? It's just a fact of life, right? And that's why we keep focusing on the end user. You've heard this before, but people need to be very careful and cognizant about clicking on links and opening emails if you're not 100% sure that it's legit, or that you're not expecting something, or if it just doesn't look right. If it doesn't look right or looks too good to be true,
Mm-hmm.
it's too good to be true, and it's not right. I mean, people talk about those emails about, I have $1 million, I want to save the world. But yeah, okay, no,
Yeah.
you don't get nothing for nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's just the old adage. Random texts from your banking provider and service providers, noting that there's a compromise and a link in there, be wary. They tend to use the same texting numbers that they came from. You'll see them all in a row or whatever. Yeah, they don't change those very often. A lot of times they tell you too if they're changing them.
Mm-hmm.
So be very leery about that kind of stuff. If you're ever concerned that you're getting something from a bank, call the number on the back of your credit card that's on your statement. There's no problem with that. Just call and just ask for customer service and tell them you got a text or a phone call, and you're just validating. They'll be, oh, sure, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Yeah, no, that's not us.
Uh-huh.
That is us. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate it.
Yep.
No one's going to get mad. If someone gets mad, it's surely a hacker of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
If they, because people, the person that calls in is like, hey, listen, I sent you your PIN. Can you read it back to me? Yeah, that's never going to happen from a true bank.
Yeah.
So either hang up on them, don't read it back to them, tell them you're not going to, or give them a fake number a few times. So when it doesn't work for them, they get really, really irritated. Whichever one, what's your vote for that day?
Yeah.
However you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
No, they're never going to get angry at you. Expect to get emails or texts that look like they're coming from an executive within your organization, or someone that looks important. And if you want to validate it, just hover over that from field. See where the email address is coming from. You can actually either click on it or hover over it or whatever you want, and you'll see where it's actually coming from. A lot of times you'll see something that's like, Mr. Important Person at Scooby-Doo at on Microsoft.com or whatever, because they can get those domains for free.
Yeah.
And they don't get validated, and they'll bypass SPF checking and DKIM, all that kind of stuff, because it's coming from a true domain.
Mm-hmm.
And they can make the language look whatever they want to on the email address. So be very wary about that kind of stuff. And the best part is, don't ever be afraid to pick up the phone to check with an executive if it came from them.
Yeah.
I have never had an executive say, when you call them up and be like, hey, I got an email that says it wants me to transfer $100,000 from your account to someplace else, have an issue with you calling them and be like, no, that wasn't me. No one will ever have a problem with that.
Yeah, and the inverse, if you don't call and turns out it wasn't them, they will have that's where you'll get into some trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So I've never had anybody have a problem with you calling them and checking on that one.
Yeah.
Same with clients, same sort of thing. If you get something that looks like it's coming from a client or whatever, and it's really not, don't ever hesitate from getting authorization from them. You call into places now, they ask you for your mother's name, your phone number, last 3 digits of something else, your cat's name, your dog's name, where you bought your cat from, whatever. It doesn't matter. They validate you, you validate them. It's all good, right? Whatever it takes for you to feel comfortable, make sure it's actually your client, know your customer, all the rest of it. Just do what you have to do. Also know that research is being done on each and every one of us all the time. There's so much data out there about all of us, they are looking up everything to do with you, and they will use it against you as best they can. Do any kind of social engineering, call someone else to find something else about you. They'll call up Austin and asking about, hey, listen, there's this guy that works for you named Dan. Yeah, do you know where he worked before? I mean, they'll do whatever. It doesn't matter. They're sneaky, you know. Always report. They were talking about the reporting spam button or whatever else. Always report spam and phishing because it helps the technology actually get better. And this one, I know you guys get the trainings. They can be goofy at times, right? It's goofy to kind of get your attention, but please take it for real. Because it does a couple things. One, it exposes you to more just exercise and everything else. The other thing too is it helps us understand who doesn't really get it, and helps us get them more training so they can actually understand it better, and helps us protect our companies even better. Is that way we know, like, hey, listen, you know what, Johnny doesn't really get it that much, but Sally does. So let's get Johnny some more targeted training, and it helps us that way as well. So just if you could, please take those trainings for real.
Excellent. Awesome, Dan. Well, hey, this has been really, really informational. Great content. And I'm sure for the audience listening out there, very insightful on just how to employ some of these best practices. We definitely appreciate it, man. And look forward to potentially having you back on a future episode about a similar topic.
I appreciate you having me on today. It's been a great time.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
No problem. Take care.